Hello, hello, everyone. Welcome to the podcast. I am so excited to have my guest, Sarah Plowman, here today. Sarah, I'm going to give a brief bio and then she's going to share all the goodness. So, Sarah is a coach, and we have been friends through the last few years, growing our businesses together. And she went from unemployed with two little babes at home as a single mama to over $500,000 in 2 years. And she helps you to embrace your icon status and get rich with ease. She is one of my most favorite people to follow and boldly walks this life. So, Sarah, thank you so much for joining us today.
Thank you, Samantha. I appreciate being here, and this definitely feels like a full circle moment because, like you said, we started around the same time, and we've really come up in this world together. So it's an honor and a privilege to talk to you today.
Yes. Oh my God. So good. I know. I love this. It really is full circle. And I cannot wait for everyone to hear your story and what you've been able to create along these few years. And so let's just dive in right there. So tell everyone, give us the story of when you got started, how you got started, kind of what life looked like then to where you are now.
Yeah, it's crazy to think about this story because it wasn't that long ago, but my whole life has changed in like the last 3 years, like you said. So it's just, yeah, it's surreal revisiting it. But 3 years ago, I was going through a separation and a divorce. I was in that process. The pandemic was also happening. So it was a big time of transition. And I had been a stay-at-home mom since I had had kids, and I hadn't worked since, it had been like 10 years since I'd worked. And even before I had kids, I didn't really have a set career path. I had been in the restaurant industry. I was doing some serving and bartending. I did a stint in retail. So when I found myself single and at home with my two little boys who were 3 and 6 at the time, I didn't know what I was going to do. I didn't know how I was going to support us. It was a time of uncertainty and it was definitely scary. But I went back to the restaurant business for a few months, and then the world shut down because of the pandemic. And around that time, I was home like all of us were with a lot of time on my hands. And I started listening to different podcasts, and I discovered a podcast about life coaching. And I never really like heard of life coaching or knew what that was, but immediately I was drawn to it. And I was like, I don't know what this is, but I love it. And I want a life coach. So I started learning the tools that I was learning through different podcasts and different life coaches that I was following online, and applying them to my life and to healing post divorce and to letting go of all this anger and resentment and victim mentality. And the transformation that I experienced from applying those tools was so quick and so dramatic. I couldn't believe how much better I felt and how much more confident and just loving towards myself, towards my kids, even towards my ex-husband. It was like, what's happening here? I'm just like shedding all of these past layers of myself that I'd been carrying around for so many years. And one day I just woke up and I was like, this is what I need to do. I need to help other women feel this good. So I hired my first coach, started my life coaching business, and started an Instagram account. Didn't know what the hell I was doing, but I just took one next step in my business. And yeah, here we are 3 years later, closing in on $750,000. It's crazy.
So good. Oh my gosh. Thank you for sharing all of that. I think that is so powerful to let other people in on and hear, to know. I mean, this podcast is all about what's possible in all the ways. And that is just such a door opening, I think, to so many people, especially women, especially my single mamas out there, where it's like, we can do, like all of us, we can create whatever we want. And you turned your life around literally in 3 years. So y'all just hear that, like 3 years, right? Total 180 of life. And so I just like wanted to point out a couple things that you said there that really stood out to me too for folks is like, well, one, you went back to the restaurant business because that's what you knew. That was the comfortable, safe, this is how we make money type of thing. And you were forced to stop. Had you not been forced to quit, you might have continued down that safe, comfortable, doing what always do and know path. And so just for people, gosh, this is like, I'm like goosebumping all over like twice already, Sarah. So like already that for people to hear and see that, where sometimes we think when shit hits the fan and the world is ending, whatever that is for every single person, whether it's a separation, a big move, losing someone, losing your job, whatever, that sometimes that hard stop that forces you to quit is the best thing for us. So I just love hearing that from you. Like, any thoughts and comments on that? Just drag it up. Yeah.
Yeah, one of my favorite phrases is now your obstacles are opportunities. And that felt like a really big, I mean, all of the things that were happening in my life felt like obstacles, like the separation and the divorce and the figuring out where I was going to
Mm.
live and how I was going to pay for rent and what I was going to do to, to continue supporting me and my kids, not just in the short term, but like, what am I going to do with my life? And I feel like that's always a question that I had. I did go to college, but I just never had this like set career path. And I just, yeah, it was such a time of questioning and uncertainty and all these obstacles in my path. But we all have that choice to look at those obstacles as opportunities. And now what I've learned to do is question, like when things happen that feel like they're happening to me or they're not what I want to be happening. Now I question, I'm like, what if this is actually happening for me? And when you open yourself up to that possibility, you see the world so much more differently and expansively, and it just opens you up to possibilities that were previously closed.
Yes. Ooh, I love that you shared that. That is so powerful for people to take. So, from that, then, to the other piece that like when you're like you didn't really know what you wanted to do with your life, and I think that's so many, or even if somebody has had that something and now it's 10 years later and here we are, like, okay, now what, right? Or you weren't happy in your job or whatever you've been doing, now what? And I love that, like, you, well, first of all, just to hear that the obstacles are opportunities, so you started to look through that lens, but then you simply like started listening to podcasts that led you to just like listen to a podcast, or some people it's open a book or whatever it is. So it's not just some like, God, universe, please download on me, like tell me like what do I do? It's like just start to explore and be curious, and you did that with podcasts to then find life coaching.
Mm-hmm.
And so I love that. It's like just take that, like do something, right? Like do
Yeah.
something to find that path. And actually that kind of actually makes me want to ask. I had this thought where like kind of to that, where you're like, you didn't really know what you wanted to do, but now you found it here. Is something you shared in one of your posts, or is kind of like a theme, I feel like with you in this icon status, is like you're now owning and embracing Sarah freaking Plowman. And you have like shared from now where you're at, and you have this career path and this purpose and this thing. But it sounded like in this post you shared, like there was glimpses of that throughout, like being a little girl and even growing up, but now you decided to own it. And I'm sure that is evolved from like day one of becoming a life coach to now. So I would love for you to share about that. Like, how did you start to really own and embrace? Like, why was now the time to be Sarah freaking Plowman?
Yeah. Oh, you're gonna make me cry. This is my work now. And it's funny, I've since evolved to business coaching, but really what I help women do is embrace their inner icon, because what I realized for myself and for all women is that I didn't have to go out and become a different version of myself.
Mm.
I just had to access what I already knew to be true about myself that I'd quieted down or dampened down over the years, or that other people had like dampened down in me. So it's not really like go out and find yourself. It's more peeling back the layers. And for many of us, it's peeling back layers of guilt and shame and trauma and what we think, what we've been told is possible or not possible for us, to get back to what we have always wanted and known as possible. Because, yeah, I've talked about how one of my earliest memories is being like a 5-year-old little girl at a ballet recital and just knowing that I was meant to be famous, like up on stage, impacting people, making them feel good. And it turns out I was right about that. I'm not doing it as a dancer, which is for a long time is what I thought I would be. Um, and then I transitioned to the restaurant business, and that was how I was, that was my stage, the restaurant floor, and I loved all the people I got to meet and helping them have a great night. But I was right about myself all along. This like inner knowing that I'm meant to be rich and famous. And it took me, longer than I was expecting to figure out how to do that. But I wasn't wrong. I was right about myself, and owning that and knowing that my job is to just be as authentically me as I possibly can. That's the work. And that's our privilege, and that's what I help women do now.
Mm, okay, I love that. And just from that, even I'm like, there was clues then all along the way. And I think all of us, when I do the same thing and I look back, I like all the things like I was always this extrovert and like talking to people and like quote unquote when I'm on stages, I was in the restaurant industry, always on the front house, never worked in the kitchen. Like, no, like I was on stage, right? And like, so I love, anyone can look back if they're feeling lost or like, what's that? Like, just start to look back on the clues your life gives you that like are things that are already there, authentic to us. They maybe just haven't looked the way maybe we thought they would, or our brains or society is labeled on it, but there's clues there. Um, okay, and so you said like access, like we have to peel back these layers and like we just need to access that version of ourselves. So can you share maybe some tips, tools, something for anyone that has helped you to like peel back those layers and access this icon version of yourself?
Yeah, what a great question. And the answer is very simple. It's not easy, but it's a very simple answer. And the way we do that is by feeling our feelings.
Mm.
That's truly the way to do it. And I thought before I started doing this work, I thought I was really emotionally intelligent and in touch with my feelings, and I knew how to experience an emotion. And I learned that there was a lot there for me to grow into, to really experience all of your emotions is a skill that not most of us are taught, and we don't know how to do it well. And that skill is something that I've gotten really good at over the past 3 years. And that is what has allowed me to show up the way I do in my business, which is I've grown it completely organically through building relationships, no ads, no, just me connecting with my audience and showing up authentically and vulnerably. And it's the capacity to feel my emotions that's allowed me to do that. It's feeling my emotions that has allowed me to make so much money and to help my people. And so, yeah, learning that skill is the number one thing that has allowed me to be so Sarah. Because think about it, in order to be our authentic selves, we have to allow vulnerability. And the flip side of the vulnerability coin is embarrassment. We have to open ourselves up to be embarrassed. We also have to open ourselves up to feeling worthy. And those are things that we are not practiced in experiencing. And so, yeah, learning that skill has been a game changer.
Ooh, okay. And to that, can you like give everyone maybe like a specific example of like what that process or what that's looked for like for you? And I'm sure many instances now of like feeling the feelings, but take us through, take them so they could start to see what does that feeling the feelings, because we're not used to doing it. What
Yeah.
does that like look like?
Sure. So embarrassment is an example I like to bring up a lot because I've had to allow a lot of embarrassment to post on Instagram, let's say, or right, you want to make a post, you know what you want to say, but you go to do it and you feel embarrassed and you're worried about what are people going to think about me, right? There's this fear of judgment. So what most people will do in that instance is they will just not post because they don't want to feel that embarrassment. They don't want to experience embarrassment in their body. And I realized, oh, if I keep avoiding embarrassment or this fear of judgment, then I will never post and I will never connect with many people and I'll never make money. So I will sit there before I post and I'll feel the embarrassment. And what I do is I drop out of my head and into my body because emotions are vibrations and they're sensations in our bodies. So I'll just become like the watcher of myself and I'll look into my body and I'll see what am I experiencing right now. And for me, embarrassment often feels like a tightness in my chest. It feels like a boa constrictor around my throat. And it feels like heat in my cheeks. Like my cheeks get really red. So I'll sit there and I'll just take a couple of breaths and I'll breathe into those parts of my body and I'll narrate like what I'm doing right now on this podcast. I'll do that in my room by myself. Okay, Sarah, your throat is really tight. Feels like something's squeezing it and your cheeks are hot and your heart is racing. And I'll just sit there and observe those things and not judge them, not think anything about them, just witness them, just bear witness to my own body and observe. And when you do that, the edges of that emotion, of that experience in your body will start to soften and it won't be as intense. And what you're doing in that moment is you're disarming it and you're showing your nervous system that that emotion is not dangerous. And sometimes I'll even say that. I'll say, you're safe to experience a squeezing around your throat. You're safe to have your cheeks turn red. You're safe to feel this embarrassment. And it does not take a long time. After a couple of seconds, you'll feel it start to soften. And then you put yourself back in the driver's seat of your experience. You say, okay, this embarrassment is coming along for the ride. It doesn't have to be totally gone, but now I feel a little bit calmer in my body. My nervous system feels calmer. And now I'm going to go make the post.
Oh my gosh, thank you so much for walking us through that. I think that's so enlightening for everyone to hear because what feeling are feelings if we're not used to doing it? And that was, you just walked us perfectly through that. So everyone can start to take that. I had a thought that even came up walking you. I mean, this was like 2 minutes, that it probably took to walk through that, right? And if we all actually did it, maybe 5 minutes, right? But I also could see, I'm sure you get this, and I hear this a lot with clients. I know this too, where it's like we're in our day to day, and it's like we just kind of are on that autopilot, like just going about the things. To be able to pause and give ourselves this space to feel the feelings, because there's probably a lot of feelings, embarrassment, like shame, guilt, whatever, the negative sadness, like all of the things. So I don't know, is there anything, did it become a practice for you to actually like give yourself the space to be like, all right, we're going to stop and not just try to like ram through the day and keep doing the things we're doing. And like, I need to actually literally stop and give myself this 5 minutes.
Yes, absolutely. And I'm glad that you brought that up because it does take dedication and practice and in the beginning you're going to feel like you're not good at it, just like with any skill, right? So think about it like going to the gym or going for a run. Like you can't go into the gym on day 1 and come out with a six pack or like not have it like not struggle to do that chin up. You have to practice. And I think about these as feeling your emotions as flexing your emotional muscles.
Mm.
And it takes practice and it takes time, but it also is something that simultaneously can have an immediate payoff. Like you can sit down and practice this and feel better immediately afterwards, but you do have to make the decision to sit down and practice it.
Oh my gosh. I love that. That is so good because I do tell people this similarly and like the mental work is just like going to the gym. We can't just do it once and then yippee skippy like we got our, result. We have to keep practicing it. But I love just that take on it, you sharing that. And that's the thing I tell people about like walking and exercise too. It's like you literally, there is no way our bodies do not feel better after a walk. I don't care if it's 5 minutes or 30 minutes. Physiologically, it works in the moment so you can feel better. So that's one of my go-to tools. But now you've just given everyone a mental flex, a mental tool that you can literally feel better in 5 minutes. Y'all,
Yeah.
did you hear that? Okay, this is like,
You can do it on your walk. You could kill two birds with one stone.
amen. Amen. All the way. Okay. So I love this. Let's keep rolling on some tools here because or some concepts because you have a few concepts that I've like heard you share and say, and I think would be really powerful for everyone to take and hear in your lens. And so I just want to start with the luxury one. Y'all need to go follow Sarah and we'll share where that's at. But like, she is all about the luxury and this icon. And I think it's a beautiful thing to like allow us all to embrace that more instead of like, especially as women, like more of the people pleasing and like we've got to be these perfect little society culture things that, and it's like, like, so this concept around luxury, you have a podcast on it. But I would just love for you to kind of share your take on luxury, what that like means and looks like for you, or when you're trying to like embody that for other women, like give that to other women, that gift of luxury. And and then part two is like also how could we apply that to our healthy habits, like for people trying to take care of themselves in their workouts or their eating. What could luxury around that look like?
Oh, I love this question, and it's such an important conversation because I know before when I heard the word luxury, my brain goes to like fancy cars or designer purses and designer clothing. And I sell high ticket coaching. I sell what is considered luxury coaching, but a lot of people who follow me aspire to do that, and that's one of the first questions they ask. Like, do I need to now like change my whole wardrobe and like only create content if I'm on an island somewhere or like, have this whole like luxurious persona? I'm like, absolutely not. Because luxury is not about the things that you have or where you are, it's about how you feel about yourself. That is what it's about. And it's about how deeply and unconditionally you love yourself and you understand your self worth, which is, by the way, our birthright. All of us are worthy simply because we're born. And to me, that's luxury. And I also like to find luxury in everyday things. Like it's luxurious to go out and take a walk along the river near my house where I live. Like that to me is luxury, and creating the luxury of time so that I can work 15 hours a week and make enough money and more than enough money to support me and my kids. Like that is luxury. Like you said, taking care of your body and nourishing yourself and getting enough sleep. I think we get to redefine what luxury means to us. And, people are often surprised to hear. I also like luxurious things, don't get me wrong, but like I don't even own designer clothing or I've never bought a designer handbag. The episode of the podcast you're referring to was like my first time inside a Gucci store, and I had this pair of earrings that I wanted to buy, but I walked in there with my Target jeans on. And it's about carrying yourself like you love yourself and you know your worth, and you aren't looking outside of yourself to prove it.
Oof. So good. So good. Oh my gosh. Okay. We're going to keep cruising along here because that was just like mic drop. I'll just rewind and listen again. Next concept I wanted to make sure we touched on, and also just this is like goes right along in line, is that we're talking about like this worthiness, and these you've shared this before, and I feel like this is you, a part of like your, what you bring is this idea of confidence and certainty. And you've talked about this as far as like when you're coaching your clients and in business, like when you have confidence and certainty in your offer and what you're doing, like that's all you need. Like for those of us in business, it could get really messy in our brains at times. But I wanted to, so just in same kind of concept here was like, could you share with folks like kind of your concept and idea around like confidence and certainty? Like, and then same, how could we use that again in our health in taking care of ourselves in our health life?
Yes. So, one thing that was very helpful to me in the beginning of this journey was separating out the definition of confidence from self confidence and
Mm,
knowing that those are two different things and understanding what they are. So, self confidence is knowing that you can feel any emotion that comes
mm,
your way and you're going to have your own back no matter what. Like this feeling of like I'm going to figure it out and I've got me. Got my back no matter what. That is self-confidence. Confidence is knowing that you can do something because you've created evidence. So for I'm a runner, not to the level that you are, but I am a runner, and when I first started running, I would take the little runs that I had done and they would give me confidence that I could run a longer run. So if I'd run a mile, I was like, okay, I can probably run 3 miles. And I had that confidence. And then when I eventually trained to do a half marathon, I had all this confidence because I had all this evidence that I'd created that I could run multiple miles. So even though I hadn't done 13 yet, I had I had past evidence from which I could draw. I also, but I needed self confidence in the beginning to say, I might be afraid that I can't go out there and run 3 miles without stopping, but I'm going to be okay. And I've got my own back, and let's just go try it. And the same thing in my business. Before I had ever charged a client for money and done a paid coaching call, I had to rely on self confidence. Like, hey, I trust you, Sarah, to go figure this out, to go try it. And whatever emotion comes up for this, you will be able to handle it because you know how to feel your feelings. And so before I had confidence, I had self confidence. And so many people will stop themselves from doing something new because they've never done it before. Because they're trying to rely on confidence. So don't do that. Rely on your self confidence when you're starting something new and know that you will build evidence that you can do it over time.
mm. So good. And I think just hearing you say that, like the question that comes up in my brain, I think people would be asking is like, how do you have your own back? Like, especially kind of like what we're talking about is like if you're trying to start something new, whatever area that is, and maybe you've also like, especially in healthy habits type things, whether it's starting to work out again or lose weight, it's like, or even starting the business when it's like you've failed and failed and failed and failed and failed. So obviously you can't pull from confidence then, but even to have your own back and self-confidence, what would you say to somebody who's like, "Ah, I really, but how do they start to have their own back?"
Yeah, that's a great question. And you're talking about healthy habits. So I have an example for you. It's We're recording this the day after Halloween, and I definitely had some Halloween candy last night when we were out trick or treating with the kids. And that was not my plan, and it was off protocol for me to eat that candy. So it's the next day now, and I'm talking to myself like I am someone that I love. I
Mm,
could beat myself up for eating the candy last night, going off protocol. I could punish myself today. I could punish myself by starving myself. I could say, oh, screw it, you already messed up, and I could have a bunch of candy for breakfast, right? These are all things that I'm sure we can relate to. We've done at some point in the past. I know I have. But I am talking to myself like I am somebody who I really love and care for. And we don't tend to do that. Think of the person who you love most in this world and how lovingly you treat them, and imagine treating yourself like that.
oh my gosh. Yes. Thank you for that. I think, okay, y'all, just like I am making notes because this is so good. I think if somebody had this tool, and I share this with people, but I think just the way you said it is like this really poignant tool where it's like, not the mindset work we have to do and the thoughts we have to, have, but it's just quite literally love yourself. Like
Yeah.
and love yourself like you would the most favorite person in the whole wide world. Like I always like to say the things like we're sharing here that you're giving us, and in general is like, let's open up a new toolbox. Let's put all the tools in there, like all
Yeah.
the tools. So you can pull those out anytime you need it. So it's like, pull it out the day after Halloween, pull it out on Thanksgiving or whatever. But like constantly pull that tool out, just like everyone uses a hammer when you need it. Use
Yes.
this.
Absolutely. And it's so, and then I couple that with like, okay, so I'm being nice to myself. Am I talking to myself like I'm someone that I love? And then I pull out the tool of, I know how to feel my emotions. So maybe what I'm feeling this morning is disappointment in myself that I ate candy, let's say, for last night. So then I'll just take a moment this morning and I'll say, okay, I'm experiencing disappointment. It feels like a lot of my emotions show up in my throat. So I'll do this, like it feels like a tightness in my throat. And even as I'm talking to you about it now, I can feel the emotion
Mhm.
welling up. I just felt like tears start to form before my eye, behind my eyes. So I'll just sit there and I'll say, okay, this is my body, or sometimes I'll talk in the third person, like this is Sarah's body experiencing disappointment. And I'll
Mm,
just let it wash over me. And then I'll give myself a hug and I'll say, okay, well, what do you want to do in this moment? Do you want to go have candy for breakfast? No. You want to go have like something that feels really nourishing. And like when you're, and I think so many of us think that in order to create change that we want, like positive change in our lives, we have to do it from a place of self loathing and
mm.
discipline and disappointment and punishing ourselves. But what I've found is that from a place of self love and abundance and like having your own back, you can actually create so much more and feel better while you're creating it.
Oh my gosh. Amen. Yes, y'all. Like, I love that because I am not a strict eating person, a diet, a counting calories, like none of that ever has worked for me. You tell me I can't eat, it's just our human brains, right? Like, but you tell me I can't eat something, like I'm gonna want to eat. I just, nobody, I feel like re- hardly, few people work that way versus the way you just described when we come from that place. And it's so much easier and like more fun.
It's
Like,
so much more fun. And that's what I tell
okay.
people, like that's that's our job. Like when you, and you hear a lot of coaches online say like, "Oh, I have fun in my business, or I have fun." And watching you, Samantha, like you get the impression that you are having fun, right? You definitely get that impression, like in your life, in your workout, and taking care of yourself. And I used to look at people like that and be like, they're just saying that. Like, that can't possibly be true. But when you're coming from this place of real self love and self confidence, and I have my own back and I know how to feel my feelings, it really, like, your life is still 50-50. We still experience uncomfortable emotions, but I think the secret to the universe is not making that a problem. Knowing how to do that, and like not, when those emotions come up, not making them mean anything about you, then you will feel like you have the keys to the universe.
Oh my God. So good. Yes, 100%. So good. Okay. Let me see here. I um I actually want to go back to like when you did get started in business. Um and just and maybe just in general, but like what do you think? Because I'm in coach land, like and even in entrepreneurs, small businesses, this also runs along the same lines of people starting their healthy habits. Like, how are some people able to just say, yep, I'm going to start doing this thing, and then they do it and they have success? Like, you've just, obviously, there's ups and downs, but there's an overall upward trajectory from when you started your business to get to where you are in 3 years. There's a lot of people that start working towards their goal and are doing the things, but really don't see that level of success. So I'm curious, what do you think that you, and you've, maybe it's some of the things you've already shared, but like, what do you think that you've done so differently than other coaches or just in general, like to go from like basically starting at nothing, yeah, to where you are today? Like, what is so different about you or your journey that we could all take and use for whatever that goal is in life?
Yeah. And yeah, my story has definitely been a quick success. Like my goal when I first started off was to make $100,000, which was more than twice what I'd ever made in a year before as a server, bartender. Like I did not think of myself as a six-figure earner. That did not seem like that was possible for me. But then I discovered the life coaching and I started my business and I was so committed to making that happen. So I think number one is commitment. I just became obsessed with that goal and I was not going to stop until I had accomplished it. And can I also just say, like, I don't think of myself as a particularly like committed or driven or motivated person. Like, I'm kind of lazy too. And I, yeah, it's just really funny the duality that we can hold as people. Like, I'm not one of these kind of go-getter people, but or these career driven people. But I was so committed to that goal and I was not going to let anything stop me. And I really embraced this belief that my success was inevitable unless I quit. And I just kept telling myself that. And that first year, I wanted to make $100,000 in a year. I ended up doing it in 15 months, so pretty close to my goal. But during that time, there was a stretch of 5 months where I didn't make a dime and where everyone said no to me. And I have pictures and videos that I took of myself at the time on my bathroom floor, like sobbing. It was so hard to keep going and I wanted to quit. There were definitely times that I wanted to quit, but I would feel those emotions and I was relentless in my pursuit of the goal. And I would say, no, Sarah, unless you quit, that $100,000 is going to be yours. And I proved myself right. And that like really set the tone for then continuing on and everything else that I've created in my business. And now I'm doing the same thing with my goal to make $1 million. My goal is to make $1 million in 2024. And I'm approaching it in the exact same way. Like I'm going to have to feel some big feelings. I'm going to go take some messy action. I'm going to go figure it out. But what I wants me back, and my success is inevitable unless I quit.
Ooh, okay. I love just like to hear that. And what I even like so committed, but also I really hear within that is like the belief you had, like you full body, like I just like truly heard like just this full body commitment of not of belief in yourself, like to be able to stay committed. You believed like in every ounce and bone of your body. I've been reading I just finished Arnold Schwarzenegger's new book, Be Useful. Think about him whatever you may in general, but like he has been very successful. And when he talks about his components, like he had a big vision. He believed in himself. Like he was already Mr. Olympia before he was. And so it's like you were building that belief and took that of like you are a six-figure woman. And so just kind of I wanted to touch on too, I have like some other like recap thoughts on that whole process you just shared. But I'm just curious, like again, kind of real tangibly, like did you literally think like I'm gonna keep going, Sarah, like every day? Or did you have any kind of like, every morning you would journal or write that thought down, or you would quite literally think that every single day? Like, is there anything really tangible there we could pull for people to start using to
Mm.
stay committed or to start to believe?
Yeah, that's a good question. A lot of people ask me like what my routines are and what my process was for that. And I have to say, it wasn't very my routine wasn't very disciplined. Like I never did and still don't have any kind of journaling practice. Um, but what I will say really helped me is I hired a mentor from day one. So I have always, from day one of my business, had a mentor, and I aligned myself with mentors who had done what I wanted to do. And a lot of people will look at successful women or successful people and think, oh, she must have something that I don't have. And I didn't ever do that. I always would look at these women and say, if she can do it, that means I can do it. And that, sometimes didn't feel 100% believable. Like my brain was like, but really, can you? So I don't want you guys to think that I've never had doubt, because I have always doubted. And I think that doubt is going to be there until the day you do the thing. Like I had some doubt until the day I saw that 100K, in my Stripe account. So, but the key is not making that doubt a problem. Again, it's thinking of all of these emotions. They're passengers in your car, but you're staying in the driver's seat. So the doubt was there, but I didn't let it call the shots. And I think day to day, my practice, even though it wasn't very habitual, was that I was showing up every day in my business, and every day I would tell myself, this is possible for you unless you quit. That thought, I definitely, like, that was my mantra. And then I would ask myself, how can you help somebody today? On the days that I felt like the days that I was on the bathroom floor crying and felt like nothing was working and no one cared about what I was saying or teaching, I would have my cry, and then I would say, okay, now who can you help today? And every time I thought that, like, how to connect with people, Sarah. Who can you connect with and how can you help somebody today? I would get up, I would dry my tears, and I would go back on the internet and I would create some content, or I would go live, or I would share the meltdown that I had just had and how I worked my way through it. And I just kept doing that. No matter, it's like that proverbial saying, like, just get back on the horse. No matter how many times I fell off or wanted to get off, I would just get back up and go help somebody.
Mm. Oh my gosh. So I love, thank you for sharing that. I think that's so powerful. And what even came up for me, a couple things was like, one, when you were talking about like the car and like the doubt. Well, first of all, thank you for sharing that because I think we all need to hear that. Like we all need to be reminded that it's always going to be there. Even when you have the six pack or you have the 6, 7 figure business, doubt will then creep in then. So it's like it's always there, but don't let it be in the driver's seat. And I just totally pictured that Disney or Pixar movie with like all the emotions in the head. And it's like they're all gonna be up there. They're having a party. Life is 50-50. The negative emotions, the positive ones. You just gotta want and like have the it's not that we can't ever experience the negative emotions, but like you said, you experience them. They're just not driving. They're not driving our results. So I love that was just, I really pictured that in my brain right now. Um, and then just like also just recapping too, like you hired a mentor from day one. So if y'all are stuck or you can fast track your way by having a coach, a mentor, somebody, right? Not just the book or the podcast. Those are great ways to start, but then like having professional help of somebody who's done what you want to do, so helpful. And I've done that in ultras where it's like I learned so much from running with other ultramarathon athletes that were better than I was, that were had done the races that I wanted to do to be able to accomplish those. um the other thing, and I know we're coming up on time here, but the other thing I just wanted to like really point out that called out to me too was you set a big goal from the beginning. You didn't just say, I want to be a coach and I just want to make some money, or I just want to help some women. Like, I just want to help people. Like, you said, I want to make 100K in a year, and like pretty badass, like ballsy goal to like start with. And I just wanted to point that out for people because I think sometimes, and like guilty of this too, is like playing small and like going for the just like out of reach goal. Like, I'll run a 5K, and no offense to all my peeps wanting to run the 5Ks, but like, it's like, and you can, and you proved it. And people running the ultra marathons, we prove it day after day, time after time. Somebody is proving the big goal is possible. So why the hell not shoot for that?
Yeah.
Um, so
Yeah, absolutely.
yeah, yeah.
It
Okay, go ahead.
I was just gonna say, yeah, I I'm really lit up by a big impossible goal. And it, so I definitely recommend to all of your listeners to set an impossible goal because you will transform who you become in the pursuit of that goal. It's not just about the moment that you achieve that. Like I remember the moment that I crossed the $100,000 mark. It was March of last year. I remember that so clearly. And it was an amazing moment, but also it was just a moment. It was so fleeting. And a couple minutes later, like my kids were screaming at me and like I had to go do the dishes and it was like life back to normal. But I transformed myself in the pursuit of that goal. And that's what makes those big impossible goals worth it. And And for those of you who do it, also like hold that vision till the end, because my goal is to do it in 12 months. And when 12 months were over, I was only like halfway there. But and as it got closer, I didn't see the way that I was going to achieve that goal, but I still stayed committed. And that's why it only took me 15 months, rather than another year, because I was like, well, let's just keep going. And it happened. And in the end, who cares that it took 15 months rather than 12? It actually makes a really great story.
Yes. Oh, I'm so glad you shared that and that you had shared like there was the 5 months of nothing because that's so important for us to hear. Like, again, in health goals too, where it's like somebody's working towards the weight loss goal or towards the race goal.
Yeah.
And it's like there may be months you don't quote unquote see the progress. It's not working, is what we tell ourselves. And it's like, and then that's when people quit. And then they start all over and totally lose all progress. And the cycle repeats. And so
Yeah.
it's like, no, 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 y'all. Hold on to that vision until you get it. As if you don't quit,
Mhm.
you will achieve it. So
Yeah. And
good.
And my favorite thought to like help myself when I'm like in that, like it doesn't make sense anymore. Like that first year, by July, or the year was half over. I had only made $10,000, and if I had done the math, I'm like, okay, I want to make 100, but if I keep making 10K every 6 months, I'll only end this year with 20K. Like it didn't make sense, but and what most people will do is lower their goal at that point. And they'll say, okay, well, that's no longer possible. So let me lower my expectation and lower my goal. But I do something different, which I
Mm,
recommend, which is at that point say, if I believed even still that that were possible for me to hit my goal, how would I show up today? Like, even though the
mm,
year's half over, even though there's 6 months left, even though this is how much I've created and it's not what I expected, if I really believed it were still possible for me to hit this goal, what would I do today? And then just do that. That's how you embody your future self. And when you show up every day embodying your future self, you will collapse time around that result. And suddenly she'll be there and you will be her and you're all one. And it's amazing.
so good. Oh my God. Great, great note to end on for everyone to take that with them and create their possible goal. Oh my gosh. Sarah, thank you so much for sharing all the lessons, the goodness, your story to help other women, everyone, to really be able to see what's possible from what you've created. So, Sarah, will you please tell everyone where they can find you and follow along and tune in, all the things?
Yes, thank you so much. It was so fun talking to you. I was so glad that we got to do this. And yeah, I would love to invite everyone to come connect with me further. So I have an Instagram presence, which is where I hang out the most. It's Sarah Plowman Coaching. So come follow me, send me a DM. I love to connect with people through Instagram. There's lots of content there. You can scroll all the way back and see the content from day one. My hand shaking as I'm holding the camera. And then I also have a website that you can check out, sarahplowmancoaching.com. And I have a podcast, a baby podcast. It's about 3 months old. It's called Iconic Leader, and you can find that on Spotify and Apple or on iTunes.
Amazing. Thank you so much, Sarah.
Thank you, Samantha, for being you and all the amazing work that you're doing in the world and for inviting me in today. I really appreciate it.
So welcome.